Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tech Files Dose of Common Sense. If common sense is supposed to be so common, how come it seems like no damn body has it? And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Dose of Common Sense. How y'all doing? Let's get to it, shall we? So, the Galaxy Note 8 that we all know is going to be released on August the 23rd, thereby beating the total in the classical bum rush of IFA. Well, now it looks like we're going to have perhaps 4 colors instead of the usual 3. So we were already told that we were going to go with the Arctic Silver, the Orchid Gray, and the Midnight Black, the exact same colors that were originally introduced with the Galaxy S8 and the Galaxy S8 Plus. Now it seems like they want to add one more to the fun. And it looks like it's going to be kind of either a midnight blue or I don't even want to say pearl blue because that's not even close, but it might be midnight blue or a topaz blue maybe. It looks like they're probably going to do that to begin with, and then later on they'll probably do the coral blue like they've done for the last 2 or 3 different cycles now. So we will see what happens. That is for absolute certainty. Hopefully it'll be a good thing. I'm not so sure about that just yet. But let's see what we come up with. I already know it's not... when they put out a phone and they decide to put the fingerprint scanner right next to the camera sensor, you already know you're going to have a little bit of problems, especially for those people who did not go originally with the S8 or the S8 Plus. So, in my personal and humble opinion, and I know this because I have the S8 Plus, so the first thing I always end up doing when I take a picture is try to keep the lens clean. And that don't always work, so let's see kind of what happens here. So, that's going to be an interesting point of view for people. Do you guys own the S8 or the S8 Plus? If so, what kind of camera issues have you experienced because of the fingerprint scanner? Well, if you've had an issue with it, give me an email, show@techfilesmedia.com, or send me a tweet at techfiles or techfilesmedia. Be more than happy to answer any questions or comments you should have along those lines as well. Next on the round robin of news for this evening, and trying to make some common sense out of this one, HTC's decided to go into the I don't know what I'm doing category. Of course, we had the 64GB variant of the HTC U11, which I have to admit is a pretty decent phone, given the fact that it has the squeezable feedback from the sides. They have decided to put out a 128GB version of the phone with 6 gigs of onboard RAM. Now, why they did not introduce this, probably because it wasn't ready at time of launch. Other than that, I'm kind of wondering what happened on this particular issue. However, the phone is available now. The pre-orders were Pre-orders are available July 25th at midnight. That's already passed, so the phone is available for pre-order now. When it's actually going to be available in stores, yet to be determined. Probably, I'm going to give it a couple of weeks. The price of the phone is $729. Now, for those of you who want the exact same specs with 2 more gigabytes of RAM, 1 or 2 features not with the HTC U11, you can always go through OnePlus. because their 128 gigabyte phone with 8 gigs of RAM is now available in the midnight gray on OnePlus.net as of right now for $539. And the way they're talking about is for immediate dispatch, meaning that phone is available to ship the moment it is ordered. At least we were told that earlier today. So, just a little comparison. By the way, if you still want the HTC 10 or the U Ultra, HTC has graciously decided to knock $300 off of each of the models. So the U Ultra would be $399 and the HTC 10, if I'm reading this correctly, would be available for $299 perhaps. If you are interested in the phone, look up htc.com. You can get all the details that you need from that particular area. Speaking of the OnePlus 5, let me ask you all a question. If you already own a phone from a particular manufacturer, I don't care who it is, Samsung, HTC, OnePlus, LG, for that matter, and you got either an ad or a survey for a chance to win a OnePlus 5, and you already own the OnePlus 5, how would you feel about this? Would you be a little bit miffed, a little bit teed off, or in utter bewilderment? Because perhaps I'm thinking probably bewilderment is going to be the first thing that pops up, and I'll explain to you why. There are several different customers of the OnePlus 5 that have either been sent ads or requests for surveys in order to win the OnePlus 5, and they've had it sent through, what else? The OnePlus 5. Why would you advertise or survey OnePlus 5 owners for a chance to win a phone that they already own? Obviously, it's not because they own two lines, it's because whoever's running the ads or running the programs from whatever source they're running it from is probably not paying attention. I can see the fact, if you already own a OnePlus, but you own a OnePlus 3T or a OnePlus 3 or 2 or even a OnePlus 1, and you had a survey or you had an advertisement for the current OnePlus, I can understand that. The perfect example of that to me would be the HTC One M8. I owned the One M8 when they came out with the HTC 10. I actually had a chance to get $100 off of the HTC 10. I wasn't able to at that moment. However, I was later. So I can kind of understand where they're coming from on this. And, for all of those wondering, it's not an entire surprise, but at the same time, you kind of got to wonder a little bit as to why. So there is that. And speaking of trolling, and we're just going to call this what it is. Speaking of trolling, Android has decided to put out developer preview number 4 for Android O, otherwise known as Android 8.0. Now, if you remember me talking not that long ago, there was talk of this being oatmeal cookie. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but whenever I heard that name, the very first thing I did, I cringed, and then I cried inside. I understand the fact that they are having certain desserts named after or for particular versions of the software. I can definitely understand that. Guys, you've licensed this name before. It wasn't all that hard. You licensed the name Kit Kat. You licensed it from Kit Kat. You licensed it for pocket change. Okay? Now, everybody expects you to call this thing Oreo or Orange Julius or whatever. I'm over it now. Okay, if you want to name this thing Oatmeal Cookie, name it Oatmeal Cookie. But for the love of God, and I'm not kidding you folks, they have decided to, as a Easter egg, and for those of you who have never seen an Easter egg on Android, if you tap the build number 7 times and you go to the version number and you press a couple of other things, you will see usually the Easter egg. And they've had anything from an ice cream sandwich to a donut to eclair, all the way to marshmallow and then nougat. I'm not kidding when I tell you this. The Easter egg for this particular developer's edition, and I have seen it, it is a black octopus. Okay. So, either you're getting away from the naming the software versions after desserts, or you are trolling everyone. I'm kind of suspecting the second. And it really doesn't matter on the first. As long as this software runs right, I don't think anybody's going to have an issue for what you call it. You could call this Android 8.0 O-Ring, and I don't think anybody would care. So, have at it. If you want to see the octopus, go to either YouTube or get the Easter egg yourself if you happen to have a Nexus or a Pixel. By the way, talking about Nexus or Pixels, they have disclosed that the Pixel XL, or both of them, if you were, will have the Snapdragon 836 SoC. A little bit more improved than the Snapdragon 835, which came on, or started to come on, Samsung Galaxy models, so on and so forth. So, congratulations, you guys actually have a better SoC than we do. Of course, for the life of me, I'll never be able to figure out how come we have 3, 4, 6, and 8 gigs of RAM. Apple usually has 2 or 3 gigs of RAM, and whenever you play a game, Apple always runs better. I'll never understand it. For the love of God, I'll never understand this. So, for all of you that would love to see driverless cars, and this doesn't matter where my listeners are on this one right now. It doesn't matter if you're in Australia or if you're in the Americas or if you are in Mexico even. There is one place that I almost guarantee that you will never see a driverless car at, and that would be India. Here is why. India has banned all driverless cars and all driverless car programs because of one reason, and I kind of giggled at this first, but if you think about location and if you think about what their technical specialty is, because India has become a very technical country over the last few years. They're doing this to protect jobs. Now, go ahead and get your giggles or get your jokes out of the way, because I came at this with one opinion and then I thought about it. If you are in a job that is very heavy into the tech industry, and India, believe me when I say, India is become a tech center for the world within the last few years, I can kind of understand why they want to ban driverless cars, because it does protect their job market somewhat. I don't think they'll be able to keep driverless cars completely out of the country, and I don't think that this law will stay into effect for too long, because once they realize the benefit of having a driverless car, maybe they'll want to at least start an autonomy driving program, who knows. But there you have it. Now, for those of you content creators out there, whether you be YouTubers, Twitch users, Twitch streamers, anyone that's interested in being a content creator, and I'm right along those lines, because not only do I do video on occasion, I haven't in a bit, but I'm also a podcaster. Facebook has bought a company called Source 3. Source 3 is a company that tries to protect digital rights. from being pirated, stolen off of the web, so on and so forth. And the reason they did it is because that way they can keep everything under... They can keep the money and give it to the content creator the way it's supposed to be done, and not just have it disappear into thin air. And I can definitely understand that, because when it comes to content creation, if that's all you do and that's what you do for a living, and there are several people I know that that's all they do, whether it's content creation, whether it's, you know, creating videos on YouTube or creating videos for Twitch or Twitch streaming, that's the only way they're feeding their families right now. That's the only way that they have a roof over their head. Some of them are very, very good at it, and there are some that are just starting at this. So my particular attitude on this is, if they want to protect content management and content creators, so be it. Here's the issue I have. Facebook has always become this leader into some particular area of technology. And before it's over with, usually what will end up happening, and this always does eventually, is for some reason Facebook starts out, and they start out with very, very good intentions, and the next thing you know, it usually ends up being a cesspool. And I can name it right off the bat. The very first thing I'll say is Facebook Live. And you may have an argument to the contrary, but Facebook Live started out as a social media experiment. It was basically designed to take an end run around YouTube and an end run around Twitch. And it turned out to end up being a cesspool, because now you have every wannabe preacher and wannabe poet and wannabe this and that and everything else, and they are basically sucking money from the public. And how do I know this? Because I've watched it happen. I watched a very good friend of mine spend their entire life savings over a preacher on Facebook, and even though we all know that that's not the proper thing to do, they can and will do it, and they will do it with no hesitation. So I just hope that their good intentions stay that way. I really, really do. And, you know, if that's what it ends up being, then I'll be right by their side the entire time. So, you know, if you're interested in content creation, and you're interested, and you are a content creator, and you want to protect your rights to earn money at this, I would watch this very closely over the next few days or weeks. So let's see what happens on this one before we call judgment on it. Next thing you know, and this is going to be out of the "Are you kidding" file. Didn't we already go through this? Roomba. Now, Roomba has been making autonomous vacuum cleaners for a few years now, and they connect via Wi-Fi, and they have certain sensors. And the sensors in question, basically, they keep track of the parameters of your room or your house. Okay, you tell the vacuum where you want it to clean, and it takes measurements. This way, it doesn't run into a wall, or go off the stairs, or go off even a platform floor if you happen to have one. So you have to excuse me, guys. Allergies again. So Roomba, in its quest to quote unquote help the public, has decided that they want to sell the customers' data to developers, quote unquote, to help developers design better home technical products. I don't know about you. I don't know how much I'm buying of this. It would depend on what kind of data you wanted to give. And think about this as well. There's only so much data that a Roomba is going to share. I mean, the most it can share is parameters of rooms, so on and so forth. But the part about this where it can get a little bit scary is if you have if you have a very if you have a house with very expensive stuff in it and you wanted to really find out what the dimensions of said house was, and your Roomba wasn't entirely a secure device, you can follow the math with me on this. Potentially hack the Roomba to get the information on the house. You'll get everything but the alarm system. I mean, they're not going to get everything, but they'll get enough data probably to make you feel a little bit creepy. So I would keep my eye on this one just to be sure that all the hooting and hollering wasn't over anything really, really major. Next up, and we're going to crush this segue, unfortunately. I should have paid attention to this one a little bit earlier. So along with the Note 8 having a different color as part of it, as a part of their color palette, one of the accessory providers for Samsung, which is basically called ZeroLemon. ZeroLemon has come out with battery packs for the Galaxy S8 and the Galaxy S8 Plus, which battery packs are not necessarily bad things. Battery case, not necessarily a bad thing either. The only problem with battery cases is they take up a lot. They make a phone that's kind of narrow and easy to hold, and they make it to a certain extent where it's not very comfortable to hold the phone. Depends on who you are. Now, these battery cases can start from a low power source of 6,300 milliamp hours, and they can go to a high of 8,500 milliamp hours. It adds hours to the phone no matter what you do. You can stream for an additional 10 to 11 hours, whether it be video or audio. These battery packs will basically last for days. I honestly, I wish I can get a hold of one from ZeroLemon. I would actually give it a shot. There's a couple of other companies that produce them as well. ZeroLemon is one that normally produces for most every phone there is. I'd love to get me a hold of a Mophie so I can compare a Mophie to a ZeroLemon. The Mophie's probably going to be better aesthetically, but if you want something that has sheer and ultimate power, you might want to look into a ZeroLemon, and they don't cost as much either. Normally it's about $45 to $55 for them. Links will be in the show description to the articles, and if you want to follow it to the product, by all means, go ahead. So, while we're talking about phones now, we're going to go into a company that I really haven't discussed much of on this podcast, and it's basically because, well, they don't normally announce very many phones during the year. But in this particular case, the Blue Vivo, it's a company called Blue, it's BLU. The Vivo 8 is going to be out shortly. Now, Blue started out as I want to say they started out basically as low budget. They're not that way anymore. They produce phones for the entire spectrum of users, whether it be the power user. I mean, they have a phone called the Blue Studio. They have a phone called the Vivo. They have phones anywhere from 2,300 milliamp hours all the way to almost 6,000 milliamp hours. I mean, they've turned into a very, very good company. The problem of it is the American public doesn't really hear a whole lot about them because, one, the phone comes unlocked. Even though they don't sell for flagship prices, some of them have near flagship specs. But I digress. Let's go ahead and get back to this. The Blue Vivo is going to be offered through Amazon within the next few weeks. It will have 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of onboard storage, and it will have a 5.5-inch 1080p display. It sounds like an awesome phone. It looks even better because it's got a metal body. It's not the polycarbonate phone that you would expect. So the phone will be available in a few weeks on Amazon. It will have Android Nougat on board. even though I'm sure by that time Android O will probably end up being just released at that point. So, and it will also be under $250, which is a very good price point, especially for those of you who are either with prepaid or wanting to get out of a very expensive postpaid contract. You won't be giving up that much, and you'll have one hell of a phone. So keep an eye on Amazon and Blue.com for the next few weeks, and this phone will pop up. I definitely recommend them because the user interface is not really that heavy. They used to be, once upon a time, it's almost non-existent anymore. It's almost stock. So if you're interested in it, it will... The article's in the description, of course, but the phone will be available in the next few weeks on Amazon.com. So what I would do is I would check into it. And you knew I was going to get to this one eventually. In the Are You High department. And it's the only one I have almost. The Huawei Watch 2. Well, the Huawei Watch 2, yay. Well, not so much. The Huawei Watch 2 is a decent watch. It's a decent smartwatch. I have no qualms with it. It's got Android Wear 2.0. My issue with the Huawei Watch 2 is they have now announced a quote-unquote Porsche design Huawei watch. This is where the part of me is screaming, dear God, why? Porsche design is basically an excuse that they get to put Porsche design somewhere on the watch and charge an astronomical out-the-tail fee for the privilege of doing so. Basically, here's what happens. You take, let's just say, you take a $350 to $450 phone, or you take a $250 to $350 watch, and you put Porsche design on it. It now gives you the right to add $200 to $300 to the phone's quote-unquote value. I don't have too much stock in this one at all, whatsoever. I think it's useless. I think if you're going to stick with Android Wear, stick with stock Android Wear. Don't skin it. Don't put any of these stupid little words such as Porsche design. It's not worked for any phone so far. What makes you think it's going to work now? So that's to be determined by you. That's not necessarily my call. But one of my duties here is to give advice on what I think of this particular bit of news. And Porsche design is nothing more than putting the two words on the watch and bumping the price clear up out of the blue. So there's that. And in the other Are You High story. And get ready for this one. I've got a problem with this. Windows Central is reporting the Windows 10 mobile beta test is almost over. Are you effing kidding me? Beta testing for Windows Phone has been dead for almost a year. My personal opinion on this. And it's because the platform is dead. Windows took a perfectly good phone platform, a perfectly good hardware company. They bought it for $7 billion and rammed the SOB straight into the damn ground. I mean, this thing nosedived worse than anything I've ever seen. And they kind of knew it too, because software support sucks for these phones. And I can almost go on a laundry list. The Lumia 930, the Lumia 830, the Lumia 950, the 950 XL, the McLaren phone, which would have bailed them out of it. Did they use it? No. Did it suck? Absolutely. And went directly into the ground. And it basically just toasted the company. That's why Microsoft ended up writing off completely, almost without a doubt, wrote off the entire value of Nokia. This is what happens when somebody buys a company without knowing what the hell to do with it. So, to the people over at Windows Central, I have no issues with that whatsoever. You have to report the news just like I do. The issue that I have with Windows saying they're almost done with beta. You're a little late, Microsoft, but thank you. Now you can go and tell all the customers that you screwed that your little beta test is over, and you'll hear crickets when it comes to buying a product. End rant. Now, on to the good stuff. For those of you T-Mobile customers who have spam blocking, I have the service too. It is probably the biggest blessing on the planet Earth. All you have to do is look at the phone. It says scam likely, and you don't even have to answer it. Thank you, God. Well, all of you that have Metro PCS phones, as of today, I do believe you are now going to have that feature as well. And I don't think that they charge for it either. In fact, I know they don't. Basically, you just add spam blocking and it will say scam likely, or or it won't even pick up the phone at that particular point. You don't even have to have the phone ring. If it's suspected that it's a scam, you don't even have to have the phone ring. End of story. And that's pretty much it. None of this is all they're going to hear on the other end of the phone. It's going to be this simple. That's it. They don't even get the signal coming in. There you go. Merry Christmas. No more spam for you. All right. This is what happens during recordings, folks. You get unsuspected things. Then again, since Yeti number 2 kind of fried my computer, unfortunately, I can't subtract this part from the show. I do apologize for that. Hopefully that will be fixed later this week. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I thank you very much for being my listeners for the day and for the night. Thank you for inviting me into your homes, your cars, or your ears. We will attempt to actually be live on Thursday morning. I'm not sure how successful that one's going to be, but we will, one way or the other, we will be available on Thursdays as normal. If you have any questions, comments, business concerns, or opportunities, please email me, show@techfilesmedia, TEKFILESMEDIA.com. Otherwise, you can join me on Twitter @TechFiles or @TechFilesMedia. We are available on Apple Podcast, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, digitalpodcast.com, TuneIn.com, SoundCloud, and on Pocketcast. And of course, as always, none of this would be possible without our hosting services at Spreaker.com, who I always thank for their support. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You all have a wonderful evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever you may be. I thank you for listening. Stay classy, ladies and gentlemen. Stay classy.